I never thought I would be sitting in a police interrogation room with two lawyers trying to convince me to confess to a crime I did not commit. But there I was, staring at my parents across the table, watching them lie through their teeth to protect my golden child brother. The same brother who stole my 2006 Honda Civic, the car I bought with my own money when I was 19 years old. The same car he crashed while drunk, killing an innocent woman. And somehow they wanted me to take the fall. I never thought my own parents would try to send me to prison for something my brother did. Before I tell you how my golden brother destroyed everything, and my parents became his accomplices, I want to know where you are watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. If you have ever felt like the invisible child in your family, hit that like button. You are going to want to see how this ends. And subscribe, because what happens next will show you that sometimes justice comes from the most unexpected places. My name is Walter, and I am the oldest son in a family that never really saw me. I am 30 years old now, working as an IT technician at a mid-sized company in Denver, Colorado. I have been on my own since I was 18, paying my own way through community college, working 2 jobs to make ends meet. My brother Dylan is 25, and he just graduated from university last year. Full ride paid by our parents, not a scholarship. Just mom and dad footing the entire bill while he partied his way through 4 years of business school. Our father Thomas is a retired accountant. Our mother Linda works as a nurse at the local hospital. Good people or so, I thought. But from the time Dylan was born, there was always this difference in how they treated us. I do not mean the normal younger sibling gets away with more stuff. I mean real obvious favoritism that everyone could see but nobody wanted to talk about. When Dylan turned 16, they threw him a massive birthday party at a rented venue. Catered food DJ, the whole thing. When I turned 16, I got a grocery store cake and dinner at a chain restaurant. When Dylan wanted the latest iPhone, Dad drove him to the store that same day. When I needed a phone for work, I had to save up for 3 months to buy a used one online. Dylan had his college paid for in full. I am still paying off my student loans, and I will be for another 8 years. But the biggest symbol of this difference, the thing that represented everything I had built for myself, was my car. That 2006 Honda Civic was not just transportation. It was proof that I could make it on my own. I bought it when I was 19 with money I saved, from working at a grocery store, stocking shelves and working the register. $5,000 for a used car that had seen better days, but it ran well. And it was mine. I remember the feeling of holding those keys for the first time. Pure pride. That car meant freedom and independence. I took care of that Civic like it was my child. Regular oil changes kept it clean, fixed anything that needed fixing. It was not flashy or expensive, but it was reliable. It got me to work every day and never let me down. That car was my companion through my early 20s. Through hard times and good times. Then Dylan started asking to borrow it. The first time was about 6 months ago. He called me on a Tuesday afternoon, said Dad's car was in the shop and he had a job interview across town. Could he borrow mine? I wanted to help my little brother, so I said yes. He promised to have it back by 6. He returned it at 9, gas tank half empty, and he did not offer to fill it up. The second time he needed it to go see his girlfriend. Just a couple hours, he said. I agreed again. He brought it back at 2 in the morning. The car reeked of beer, and there were fast food wrappers all over the back seat. When I mentioned it the next day, he laughed it off. You are overreacting. It is just a car, he said. When I complained to Mom and Dad, they took his side. He is young. Let him have fun, Dad said. You are being too uptight about this, Walter, Mom added. But what happened that Friday morning changed everything. I woke up at 6:30, got ready for work, grabbed my keys and headed down to the parking lot. My spot was empty. The car was gone. I stood there for a solid minute thinking maybe I parked somewhere else and forgot. But no, it was gone. I called Dylan immediately. No answer. I called again. Straight to voicemail. I called my parents. Oh, Dylan probably needed it for something important, Mom said casually, like it was no big deal that my brother had taken my car without asking. I was furious. I had to call my coworker Jake and beg him to pick me up for work. Embarrassing. I tried calling Dylan all day. Nothing. Every call went to voicemail. I texted him a dozen times. No response. By the time I got home that evening, the car still was not back. Dylan was still unreachable. I had this sick feeling in my stomach that something was wrong, but I had no idea just how wrong things were about to get. At 2 a.m, someone knocked on my apartment door. Hard, urgent knocking that jolted me out of sleep. I stumbled to the door in my pajamas and looked through the peephole. 2 police officers stood in the hallway. My heart dropped. I opened the door, and one of them asked if I was Walter Jennings. I said yes. They told me my Honda Civic had been involved in a fatal hit-and-run accident. A 62-year-old woman named Margaret Peterson had been struck while crossing the street at 11 o'clock the previous night. She died at the scene. The driver fled. I could not breathe. I could not process what they were saying. A woman was dead. My car killed someone, but I was not driving. I was home all night. I told them that immediately. I was not driving my car. My brother borrowed it without permission, and I had not seen it or him since yesterday morning. They asked if I could prove I was home. I said yes, absolutely. I ordered food delivery that arrived at 7:30. I had the receipt on my phone. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, saw me come home from work, and I never left. They wrote everything down. They said they needed me to come to the station to give a formal statement. The detective explained that traffic cameras caught my car near the scene. The footage showed the vehicle swerving, running a red light, and striking Mrs. Peterson in the crosswalk. The driver did not stop. Witnesses reported the driver appeared intoxicated, weaving between lanes before the impact, but the camera angle and darkness made it impossible to identify the driver clearly. They could see someone wearing a baseball cap, but the face was obscured. Because the car was registered in my name, I was the primary suspect. They needed to verify my alibi and locate Dylan. I gave them his phone number, his address at our parents' house where he still lived, everything I could think of. They said they would investigate, but advised me not to leave the city. I was not under arrest, but I was definitely not free either. I barely slept the rest of that night. A woman was dead. An innocent person walking across the street, and she was gone because my brother got behind the wheel drunk. I was angry, terrified, and heartbroken all at once. But more than anything, I felt betrayed. Dylan took my car without asking and destroyed someone's life. And now I was the one facing the consequences. The next morning, I drove straight to my parents' house. Jake let me borrow his car. I needed answers. I needed to see Dylan. I needed my parents to help fix this nightmare. But what I got instead was something I never could have predicted. Mom answered the door. Her eyes were red like she had been crying. "Where is Dylan?" I asked before I even stepped inside. She said he was not there, that he had to go out of town for work. Dylan barely had a job. He did some freelance consulting thing that Dad set up for him. "You need to call him right now," I said. "The police are looking for him. He needs to explain what happened." Dad came into the living room. His face was hard, closed off. "What are you doing here, Walter?" he asked. "I lost it." I told them everything. The police, the accident, the dead woman Dylan taking my car without permission. I said Dylan needed to come forward immediately and tell the truth. But Dad's response made my blood run cold. "Are you trying to blame your brother?" he said. "Not are you okay. Not how can we help. Just immediate defense of Dylan." Mom started crying harder. "Dylan would never do something like that," she sobbed. I could not believe what I was hearing. I laid out the facts. Dylan took my car without asking. He would not answer his phone all day. The accident happened while he had my car. It was obvious. But they refused to accept it. "You are just looking for a scapegoat," Dad said. Then Mom said something that made my stomach drop. "Dylan told us you let him borrow the car." I stood there stunned. "That is a lie," I said. "I did not even know he took it until I saw it was gone." But I could see in their faces that they believed Dylan over me. They believed their golden child who had never faced real consequences for anything in his life. Dad looked at me with something close to disgust. "You have always been jealous of your brother," he said. I left. There was nothing else to say. My own parents had chosen Dylan's lies over my truth. I drove back to my apartment feeling more alone than I had ever felt in my life. I had no car, no family support, and a murder charge potentially hanging over my head. All because I had the misfortune of being born first to parents who only had enough love for one son. 2 days later, the police called me back to the station. I thought maybe they had found Dylan, that he had finally come forward to tell the truth. I was so wrong. When I arrived, I was led into an interview room. And sitting there were my parents, Dylan, and a lawyer I had never seen before. A lawyer my parents had hired for Dylan. Dylan looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands shaking slightly. But when he saw me, he did not look guilty or apologetic. He looked scared. Scared he might actually have to face consequences. The detective started the interview, and that is when Dylan told his version of events. He said I had let him borrow the car earlier that day. But then later that evening I had come to Mom and Dad's house, taken the keys back, and said I needed the car to meet up with a friend. According to Dylan, I drove off around 10 o'clock that night. My parents nodded along. We heard Walter tell Dylan he was taking the car back, Mom said. Dad confirmed it. He said he needed it for a couple hours. They were lying. They were sitting there looking police officers in the eye and lying to protect Dylan. The lawyer, a slick guy in an expensive suit, leaned forward. My clients want to cooperate fully with this investigation, he said. They believe there has been a misunderstanding. Perhaps Walter does not remember the evening clearly due to stress or substance use. Substance use. They were suggesting I had been drunk or high. I had never been so angry in my entire life. I looked at Dylan, really looked at him, and I saw something I had never seen before. He was not my little brother anymore. He was a coward who would let me go to prison to save himself, and my parents were helping him do it. This is insane, I said. I was not there. I did not drive that car. I have proof I was home. The detective asked Dylan if he had any proof of his story. Dylan said he did not, but our parents were his witnesses. 2 witnesses against my word. The lawyer then suggested something that made me want to flip the table. He said that perhaps the best resolution would be for me to accept responsibility, that it would look better to a judge if I came forward voluntarily rather than being arrested, that we could work out a plea deal. They wanted me to confess, to say I killed Margaret Peterson, to go to prison for something Dylan did. And my parents sat there nodding like this was a reasonable solution. Like sacrificing one son to save the other was just good family planning. I stood up. I am not signing anything I said, and I am getting my own lawyer. I walked out of that police station knowing that I was completely on my own. My family had declared war on me, and I was going to have to fight back with everything I had. The next morning I emptied my savings account, $5,000. Every penny I had been saving for a down payment on a house someday. I used it to hire Sarah Brennan, a criminal defense attorney with a solid reputation. She was not cheap, but she was good, and I needed good. I sat in her office and told her everything. The years of favoritism. Dylan's drinking problem that my parents always covered up. The way he had taken my car without permission. The accident. The lies. Everything. Sarah listened without interrupting, taking notes, her expression, getting more serious as I talked. When I finished, she put down her pen and looked at me. I believe you, she said, just like that. Your alibi is solid. The timeline does not work for their story. And honestly, their version has more holes than Swiss cheese. She asked me detailed questions about Dylan, his habits, his friends, his lifestyle. I told her about the time 2 years ago when Dylan got pulled over for drunk driving. Dad called in a favor with someone he knew in the DA's office. The charges mysteriously disappeared. Dylan never faced any consequences. Sarah's eyes lit up. That is exactly the kind of pattern we need, she said. She laid out a plan. We were going to prove Dylan was the driver, and we were going to prove my parents knew it. It would not be easy, and it would not be pretty. But it was the only way. Are you prepared for what this means? She asked me. Going after your family like this. Even if we win, those relationships are probably over. I did not even hesitate. They were already over the moment they decided to throw me under the bus, I said. Sarah hired a private investigator. Within a week, we started finding things. Dylan's bank records showed he withdrew cash from an ATM 3 miles from the accident scene at 10:30 that night. Security footage from a liquor store nearby showed Dylan purchasing a bottle of whiskey at 10:45. The store manager remembered him because Dylan was already drunk and tried to argue when the manager almost refused the sale. But the real breakthrough came from Dylan's phone. Sarah filed a motion to have it examined as evidence. The GPS data told the whole story. Dylan's phone was at the accident location at the exact time of impact. His text messages that night were even more damning. At 10:50, he texted a friend, "I am so drunk, should not be driving, LOL." 15 minutes before he killed Margaret Peterson. We examined the car more carefully, too. The police had impounded it as evidence, and Sarah got access. Fingerprints on the steering wheel and driver's seat. Dylan's fingerprints, not mine. The seat and mirror adjustments. Set for someone 5'9", Dylan's height. Not 6'1", my height. Hair and biological traces in the car. Dylan's DNA, not mine. And in the back seat they found pieces of a broken whiskey bottle. Same brand Dylan bought that night. His fingerprints on the glass. But what Sarah found next was what really broke the case open. She subpoenaed my parents' phone records and emails. What we discovered made me physically ill. Text messages between Mom and Dylan the morning after the accident. "Do not worry, we will handle this. Just stick to the story." A phone call between Dad and the family lawyer before they went to the police station. The lawyer's notes from that call outlined the strategy. Pin it on Walter. Use the car registration as leverage. Get Walter to confess to protect the family. There was even an email from Dad to someone at the vehicle registration office asking about procedures for transferring car ownership. He had been researching ways to make the story more believable. My parents had not just been protecting Dylan, they had been actively plotting to send me to prison. They knew Dylan killed that woman. They knew from the very beginning. And they decided I was acceptable collateral damage. Sarah asked me how I felt about what we had found. I told her the truth. I felt devastated, angry, betrayed in ways I did not have words for. But I also felt determined. Margaret Peterson deserved justice. Her family deserved to know the truth. And I deserved to have my name cleared. "Then let us take them down," Sarah said. The hearing was set for 3 weeks later. Sarah submitted all our evidence to the court and the district attorney. Copies of everything. The GPS data, the text messages, the security footage, the forensic evidence from the car, the phone records, showing my parents' conspiracy. It was airtight. There was no way Dylan could wiggle out of this. No way my parents could claim ignorance. The day of the hearing, I walked into that courtroom feeling like I was going to throw up. Dylan was there with his lawyer. My parents sat behind him, Mom crying, Dad stone-faced. They did not look at me. Not once. The judge reviewed the evidence Sarah had submitted. It took 2 hours. Dylan's lawyer tried to argue that the evidence was circumstantial, that it did not prove Dylan was driving. But the judge was not buying it. Then, the prosecutor stood up and announced that based on the new evidence, the state was filing charges against Dylan Jennings for vehicular manslaughter, hit and run, making false statements to police, and obstruction of justice. Against Thomas Jennings, for conspiracy to obstruct justice, making false statements, and attempted fraud against the court. Mom was offered immunity in exchange for her testimony, but she would be under supervised probation. The bailiff walked over to Dylan. I watched as they put handcuffs on my little brother. He looked at me then finally, and I saw something I had never seen in his eyes before. Accountability. He knew he was caught. He knew he was going to prison. Dad was handcuffed next. He did not fight it, just stood there stiffly as they read him his rights. Mom collapsed into sobs. The judge thanked Sarah for her thorough investigation and apologized to me on behalf of the court for the ordeal I had been through. I was completely exonerated. All charges or potential charges dropped. The police issued a formal apology. It should have felt like victory, And in a way it did. But mostly it just felt empty. 6 months later, Dylan was sentenced to 12 years in prison. He pleaded guilty to all charges in exchange for avoiding a trial. Dad got 5 years for conspiracy and obstruction. He could have gotten more, but his lawyer worked out a deal. Mom never went to jail, but she lost her nursing license for a year and had to do community service. The last I heard, she moved to Arizona to live with her sister. We have not spoken. The first few weeks after the trial were the hardest. I would come home to my empty apartment and just sit there in the silence. I had no family anymore. The people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had been willing to destroy my life to protect their favorite. I looked at old family photos, sometimes pictures from when I was a kid, and I tried to remember if there was ever a time when they really loved me. I could not tell anymore. I cried a lot during those weeks. Alone in my apartment late at night, I would just break down. Not because I missed them exactly, but because I was mourning what I thought I had. The idea of a family that cared about me, that illusion was gone forever, and grief for that loss was real and painful. But slowly things started to get better. My coworker, Jake, the one who had been giving me rides to work, invited me to have dinner with his family. His wife made lasagna, and we sat around their table with their 2 kids, and it felt warm, normal. Jake's wife told me I was welcome anytime. Family is not just blood, she said. It is the people who show up for you. That stuck with me. I started going to therapy. My therapist, Dr. Martinez, helped me work through the trauma of what my family had done. She taught me that I was not responsible for their choices, that their dysfunction was not my fault. She helped me understand that setting boundaries, even with family, was not just okay but necessary. I joined a support group for people who had been betrayed by family members. Hearing other people's stories, knowing I was not alone in this experience, helped more than I expected. I began rebuilding my life piece by piece. I bought a new car, a 2008 Toyota Camry. Not as sentimental as my old Civic, but it was mine, and it represented a fresh start. Work got better too. I got a promotion to senior technician. My boss said I had shown incredible resilience and professionalism through everything. The raise meant I could finally afford to move to a nicer apartment. I even started dating. Her name is Emma. I met her at the support group, actually. She had been disowned by her parents for refusing to give them money she had inherited from her grandmother. We bonded over coffee after a meeting, and 6 months later we are still together. She understands my damage because she has her own. We are both learning to build healthy relationships after growing up in toxic ones. About 6 months after the sentencing, I got a letter from Mom. It was 8 pages long, handwritten. She apologized over and over. She said she had been blind, that her love for Dylan had made her cruel to me. She said she understood if I never wanted to speak to her again, but she hoped someday I might be able to forgive her. She asked if we could meet to talk. I thought about it for 2 weeks. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let her sit with her guilt the way I had to sit with the betrayal. But another part of me, the part that Dr. Martinez had been nurturing in therapy, knew that forgiveness was not about them. It was about me, about letting go of the poison. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop. Neutral ground, public place. When I walked in, she looked smaller somehow, older, tired. We sat down and she started crying immediately. She apologized again. Said she did not know how she could have been so wrong, so willing to sacrifice me. She said she understood now that she had failed me as a mother my entire life, not just during the trial. I listened. I did not interrupt. When she finished, I told her the truth. I can forgive you eventually, but I cannot forget. And I cannot have you in my life right now. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand, she whispered. I told her that maybe someday, years from now, we could try to rebuild something. But it would have to be completely different. No more golden child dynamics. No more favoritism. Real honesty and equality, or nothing at all. She said she would work on herself, that she hoped to be worthy of another chance someday. I left that coffee shop feeling lighter. Not because we had reconciled. We had not. But because I had set my boundaries clearly and stuck to them. I had taken back my power. My life was mine again, and nobody could take that from me. Looking back now, I understand things about my family that I did not see before. My parents' love for Dylan was not really love. It was enabling. It was toxic attachment that hurt him as much as it hurt me. By never holding him accountable, they created a person who thought he could get away with anything. And when he finally did something so terrible it could not be hidden, they were so invested in protecting him that they were willing to commit crimes themselves. They destroyed our entire family to avoid admitting they had failed as parents. Dylan never learned responsibility because he never had to. Every mistake was smoothed over, every consequence avoided. And now he is sitting in a prison cell, probably still believing he is the victim somehow. Dad enabled all of it, used his connections to make problems disappear, until the problem became too big. And Mom went along with everything because challenging Dad meant admitting their parenting had been wrong all along. I do not hate them anymore. I really do not. Hate takes too much energy, and I need that energy for building the life I want. But I do not need them either. I have found my own family, Jake and his wife and kids, Emma and her chosen family. My support group friends who understand, Dr. Martinez who taught me how to heal. These are the people who showed up for me when blood relatives did not. These are the people who deserve my love and trust. Sometimes people ask me if I regret fighting back against my family. If I wish I had just walked away quietly instead of pursuing charges against Dylan and Dad. The answer is always no. What they did to me was wrong. What Dylan did to Margaret Peterson was unforgivable. Justice mattered. The truth mattered. And standing up for myself, even when it cost me my family, mattered most of all. I learned something important through all of this. You do not owe anyone your peace. Not even your parents. Not even your siblings. There is this idea in our culture that family is everything, that you have to forgive family no matter what, that blood is thicker than water. But that is garbage. Family means nothing if those people hurt you, betray you, try to destroy your life. Real family is the people who protect you, support you, believe you. Real family is built on respect and trust, not biology. If you are watching this and you are going through something similar, please hear me. You are not crazy. You are not selfish. You are not wrong for setting boundaries with people who hurt you, even if they are related to you. You have the right to choose who gets access to your life. You have the right to walk away from people who treat you badly. You have the right to prioritize your own well-being over someone else's comfort. Your life belongs to you, not your parents, not your siblings. You. And nobody has the right to take that from you, or ask you to sacrifice yourself to protect them from consequences they brought on themselves. I had to learn that the hard way. I hope you do not have to go through what I went through. But if you do, remember that you are stronger than you think. You can survive this. You can rebuild. You can find real love and real family. I did. So here is my question for you. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own well-being? How did you handle it? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one, and your stories matter. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these videos and realize they are not alone. Subscribe to this channel because I share real stories about real struggles, and there is a whole community here ready to support you. And share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who feels trapped by toxic family dynamics. Sometimes knowing that other people survived gives us the courage to fight back. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it was heavy, but I hope it reminded you that you have more power than you realize. That standing up for yourself is always worth it, even when it is hard, even when it costs you. Because at the end of the day, the only person you have to live with for your entire life is yourself. Make sure you are someone you are proud of. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember that your peace matters more than anyone's comfort. Stay strong.